I spent 12 years making sure my parents never had to worry about money again. I paid off their mortgage, covered my mother's heart surgery, replaced their broken-down car, fixed their roof, updated their heating system, and even funded their annual vacations. I thought this was what a good son did. I thought I was honoring the people who raised me. But everything I believed shattered the moment I walked into their house unannounced and heard my mother on the phone with my Aunt Martha calling me a freeloader in the very home I had been paying for. That word changed everything. Before I tell you how I handled this betrayal, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. If you have ever felt unappreciated by the people you have sacrificed, hit that like button because you are not alone. And subscribe, because what happened next taught me the hardest lesson about family I have ever learned. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. I grew up in a middle-class home in Ohio. My father, Harold, worked at an automotive manufacturing plant for 30 years. My mother, Patricia, was a part-time nurse at the local clinic. I was their only child, which meant all their hopes and dreams rested squarely on my shoulders. We were not wealthy by any stretch, but we were not struggling either. Dinner was always on the table. I had clothes that fit and school supplies when I needed them. It was a normal childhood, the kind you do not think much about until you look back years later and realize how ordinary it all was. From the time I could understand words, my parents drilled one phrase into my head: family takes care of family. It was their mantra, repeated at Sunday dinners and on long car rides. When my grandfather got sick, my father took extra shifts to help pay for his medication. When my mother's sister lost her job, we had her staying in our guest room for 6 months. So naturally, when I grew up, I believed that taking care of family was not just expected, it was the only right thing to do. I worked hard in school because I wanted to make them proud. I stayed up late studying, joined every academic club I could find, and pushed myself to earn a scholarship to State University. I did not want them to carry the burden of tuition, so I took on 3 part-time jobs while juggling a full course load. I worked at a campus bookstore during the day, waited tables at a diner 3 nights a week, and did freelance data entry on weekends. I barely slept, but it felt worth it. I graduated with a degree in business administration and a grade point average high enough to catch the attention of recruiters from a financial consulting firm in Cleveland. At 23, I accepted a position as a junior analyst. The pay was decent, around $50,000 a year, and I felt like I had finally made it. I rented a tiny studio apartment, bought a used sedan, and started building my career. I was careful with money because that was how I was raised. I saved every extra dollar, cooked my meals at home, and avoided unnecessary expenses. By the time I turned 26, I had worked my way up to a senior analyst position, and my salary jumped to $75,000 a year. I bought a small 1-bedroom apartment in a modest neighborhood and felt genuinely proud of myself. Life was moving forward. Then everything shifted. My father called me one evening, his voice heavy in a way I had never heard before. The plant where he had worked for 3 decades was shutting down. He was 58 years old, too young to retire, but too old to easily find another job in the same industry. A few months later, my mother had to stop working because of a heart condition that left her weak and short of breath. Suddenly, the people who had always been my safety net were struggling, and I knew what I had to do. I started sending them $1,000 a month to help cover their bills. It was not a burden at first. I was single, had no major expenses, and genuinely wanted to help. But then the mortgage on their house became a problem. They were 3 months behind and facing foreclosure. I could not stand the idea of them losing the home they had lived in for 25 years. So I dipped into my savings and paid off the remaining $40,000 in one lump sum. Just like that, their house was free and clear. Then came my mother's surgery. Her heart condition worsened, and the doctors said she needed an operation to install a pacemaker. Insurance covered part of it, but there was still a $23,000 gap. I paid it without hesitation. A few months later, their roof started leaking, and the contractor quoted $8,000 for repairs. I paid that too. Then their heating system failed in the middle of winter, and I covered the $6,000 replacement. When their old car finally died, I bought them a used sedan for $18,000. Over the course of 5 years, I gave my parents $150,000. I kept a mental tally at first, not because I expected to be paid back, but because I needed to make sure I could still cover my own expenses. I postponed buying a bigger place. I kept driving my old car, even though it was burning oil and making strange noises. I delayed plans to propose to my girlfriend Amanda because I had spent the money I had been saving for a ring on my parents' heating system. Amanda was patient at first. She understood that family was important to me, but as the years went on, I started to notice the small signs that my parents did not appreciate what I was doing. They never said thank you, at least not in a way that felt genuine. When I would visit, instead of expressing gratitude, they would point out things they still needed. My mother would say things like, "Why did you not get us the bigger television? The neighbors just got back from Hawaii. Why can you not take us on a trip like that?" I brushed it off. I told myself they were just getting older and set in their ways. But Amanda saw through it. She would tell me, "Gilbert, they are taking advantage of you." And I would defend them every time. "They raised me," I would say. "This is the least I can do." But deep down, a small voice was starting to whisper that maybe she was right. The real cracks started to show during Thanksgiving when I was 32. I had been planning to propose to Amanda right after the holiday. I had finally saved enough to buy her a beautiful diamond ring, $5,000, that I had scraped together over 8 months. I was excited, nervous, ready to start the next chapter of my life. Then my father called. "Son, your mother and I want to host a big Thanksgiving this year, the whole family. But the refrigerator just broke, and we cannot have everyone over without a working fridge. Can you help us out?" I felt my stomach drop, but I agreed. I bought them a stainless steel refrigerator with an ice maker and all the features for $1,200. 2 days later, my mother called. "Gilbert, honey, the dining table is so old and scratched up. It would be embarrassing to have everyone eat at it. Could you get us a new one?" I hesitated for half a second, then said yes. $2,000 for a solid oak dining set. When Thanksgiving arrived, Amanda and I drove to my parents' house. The place was packed with relatives. Aunt Martha was there with her husband, my Uncle George, and a handful of cousins I had not seen in years. The new refrigerator gleamed in the kitchen. The new dining table was covered with food. My parents were beaming, playing the role of generous hosts. But as I stood there watching them, I realized something that made my chest tighten. They were showing off everything to the relatives. "Look at this beautiful table," my mother said. "And this refrigerator, top of the line," my father added. But not once did they mention that I had paid for any of it. They acted like they had bought these things themselves, like they were doing well, and wanted to share their good fortune. I felt invisible. Then during dinner I made a comment about the turkey being a little dry. It was not meant to be rude, just an observation. But my mother snapped at me in front of everyone. "Gilbert, do not act like you know everything. You might be good at making money, but you do not know the first thing about cooking." The table went silent. I felt my face flush. Amanda reached under the table and squeezed my hand, and I could see the anger in her eyes. She was furious on my behalf, but I just sat there and took it. On the drive home, Amanda finally let it all out. "When are you going to stop letting them walk all over you, Gilbert?" I tried to defend my parents, but she was not having it. "They are your parents, and you have paid them back 10 times over for raising you. They do not even acknowledge what you do for them. Do you realize how messed up that is?" We argued for the first time in our relationship. It was not yelling, but it was intense. She told me she could not marry someone who did not stand up for himself, someone who put his parents above their future together. I was stunned. I had not realized how much this had been affecting her. We agreed to take a break, and she moved some of her things out of my apartment that weekend. I felt like I was losing everything. I tried to tell myself she just needed time to cool off, but the loneliness that followed was suffocating. I started questioning everything. Was I really doing the right thing? Was I being a good son, or was I being a fool? 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, my mother called again. "Gilbert, sweetie, I have been wanting to visit my old friend Sandra in California. I have not seen her in years. Could you help with the plane tickets and hotel, just for a week?" I felt exhausted just hearing the request. "Mom, I just bought you a refrigerator and a dining set. I am running low on savings right now." There was a long pause, and then her voice turned cold. Are you seriously going to be stingy with your own mother? I raised you, fed you, clothed you, and now you cannot do this one little thing for me. The guilt hit me like a punch to the gut. I agreed and spent $3,000 on her trip. A month later, my father called. He wanted a big flat-screen television because the current one was too small, even though it was only 2 years old. When I hesitated, he said, "You are doing well for yourself, son. Why are you being so cheap with your own parents?" Another $1,500 gone. I sat in my apartment one night and looked around. I was still living in the same small place I had bought 6 years ago. My car was 10 years old and barely running. I was eating instant noodles for dinner to save money. Meanwhile, my parents had a mortgage-free house, a new car, new appliances, and were taking trips across the country. And yet I was the one being called cheap. My best friend from college, Marcus, came to visit around this time. He took one look at me and asked if I was okay. I looked thinner, more tired. I told him about the breakup with Amanda, and he immediately connected the dots. This is about your parents, is it not? I nodded, and he shook his head in disbelief. Dude, you are 32 years old. You have given them everything. When are you going to live your own life? I got defensive. You do not understand, Marcus. It is complicated. He leaned forward, his expression serious. No, Gilbert. It is not complicated. They are using you. I asked him to leave, angry that he could not see things from my perspective, but after he was gone, his words echoed in my head for days. Were they using me? Was I really just a wallet to them? The day that changed everything was a Saturday in early December. I had decided to surprise my parents by stopping by to fix a leaky faucet in their kitchen. I had the day off, and I thought it would be a nice gesture. I had a key to their house, so I let myself in quietly, carrying my toolbox. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard my mother's voice coming from the living room. She was on the phone, and her tone was light, almost amused. I was about to call out to let her know I was there when I heard her say my name. Yeah, Martha, can you believe it? Gilbert still lives in that cramped apartment while we are here, enjoying everything he paid for. She laughed, and I froze. I heard Aunt Martha's voice through the speaker. My mother had the phone on speaker mode, and I could hear every word. Well, at least he is useful for something. My mother laughed again, and then she said the words that felt like a knife to my chest. Useful, Martha, he is a freeloader. He has been living off us since he was born. Now he thinks buying us stuff makes up for it. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My mother kept talking. Harold and I worked so hard to raise him. He owes us everything. The house, the car, the trips, it is the least he can do. My Aunt Martha chimed in. He is still single, right? What a loser. Cannot even keep a girlfriend. My mother replied, because he is weak, Martha. He always has been. But he is a good ATM machine. Both of them laughed. I stood there in the hallway, my hands shaking. I could not breathe. The word freeloader kept replaying in my head. I had given them $150,000. I had sacrificed my relationship, my savings, my future, and they thought I owed them. They thought I was living off them. I quietly set down my toolbox, turned around, and walked out of the house. I closed the door so softly they never even knew I had been there. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, unable to move. Tears ran down my face, and I did not bother wiping them away. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and heartbroken. These were the people who were supposed to love me, and they saw me as nothing more than a source of money, an ATM machine. That was what my mother had called me. I drove home in a daze and did not sleep that night. I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank statements from the past 5 years. I went through every transaction, every check I had written, every wire transfer I had sent. The total came to $187,000, nearly $200,000 that I had given to people who called me a freeloader behind my back. I thought about all the times they had not said thank you, all the times they had asked for more, all the times they had made me feel guilty for hesitating. I thought about Amanda and how I had lost her because I had been too blind to see what was happening. I thought about the house I could have bought, the trips I could have taken, the life I could have built. And then for the first time in my life, I felt something shift inside me. The guilt that had always controlled me started to fade, and in its place I felt clarity. I did not owe my parents my entire life. I had done more than enough. I was done. The next morning I called my parents. "I need to come over. We need to talk." My father sounded concerned. "What is wrong, son? You sound serious." "I will tell you when I get there," I said, and hung up. I drove to their house with a calm I had not felt in years. I was not angry. I was not sad. I was just done. When I walked in, both of them were sitting in the living room looking nervous. My father stood up. "Gilbert, what is going on? You are scaring us." I sat down across from them and looked them both in the eye. "I heard your conversation with Aunt Martha yesterday," I said. My mother's face went pale. "What conversation?" she stammered. "The one where you called me a freeloader," I said evenly. "The one where you said I am an ATM machine." My father opened his mouth to speak, but I held up my hand. "Do not." I heard every word. The silence was deafening. My father finally spoke. "Son, your mother did not mean it like that." "Yes, she did," I said. "And you know what? It does not even matter anymore. I am done." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "What do you mean you are done?" I stood up. "For the past 5 years, I have given you $187,000. I paid off your mortgage. I paid for Mom's surgery. I bought you a car, a refrigerator, a dining set, trips to California, and you called me a freeloader." My mother tried to interrupt. "We raised you for 18 years. That was your responsibility as parents," I said firmly. "I did not ask to be born. You chose to have me, and raising me was your job. I do not owe you my entire life because of it." My father stood up, his face red. "You cannot just abandon us, Gilbert. We are your parents." "I am not abandoning you," I said. "You have your house. You have your car. You have your health. Figure out the rest yourselves." I pulled out the spare key to their house from my keychain and set it on the coffee table. "I will not be coming back uninvited," I said. My mother started crying. "You are being cruel. How can you do this to us?" I walked toward the door, then turned back. "No, Mom. What is cruel is calling your son a freeloader while he is paying for your life. What is cruel is treating him like an ATM machine. I am just setting boundaries." I walked out as they called after me, their voices a mix of anger and desperation. I got in my car and drove away, and for the first time in years I felt free. The first 3 months after cutting off my parents were hard, but not in the way I expected. I did not miss them. What I struggled with was the guilt that had been programmed into me since childhood. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt a jolt of anxiety, wondering if it was them. I had blocked their numbers after they called me 30 times in a single day, leaving voicemails that ranged from apologetic to angry to manipulative. They started reaching out through relatives. Aunt Martha called and I almost laughed. "Your parents are heartbroken, Gilbert. How could you do this to them?" I took a deep breath. "Aunt Martha, did they tell you what they said about me?" I told her everything. There was a long silence, and then she hung up. I never heard from her again. Uncle George sent me a long email about the importance of forgiveness and family. I appreciated the sentiment, but I wrote back with a simple response. "I am not angry. I am just done being disrespected." A few weeks later, my parents sent me a letter. It was 2 pages long, filled with apologies, but between the lines I could still see the manipulation. "We are sorry if we hurt your feelings, but you have to understand how hard it has been for us. We never meant to make you feel unappreciated." I read it once and threw it away. "If" was not an apology. It was an excuse. Instead of dwelling on them, I focused on rebuilding my life.